Hi everyone, it's Daria. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm back with another video in my hometown tourist series. If you haven't heard me talk about it before, it's a project that I started recently documenting the place where I live, which is Vancouver, Canada. And today I'm going to be setting up the notebook where I will be documenting everything. This is a traveler's notebook from Traveler's Company. So you saw a very quick flip through that I did at the very beginning. That's because I stamped it with official stamps from the Traveler's Company that I got at the Traveler's Company partner store called Paperya, which is located here in Vancouver on Granville Island. If you haven't seen my video visiting that store, I will link it up above at the eye for you, as well as down below in the description. And to set up my notebook, I am going to use stamps from Studio Calico that are actually, I think, travel stamps themed by the places where I live. So one of them is a British Columbia stamp, which is the province where Vancouver is located. The other one is a Vancouver stamp. And what I decided to do is create a type of a pattern paper on the cover, basically. So I'm just using the black ink from Ali Edwards to stamp out my sentiments. And you can see I'm kind of trying to arrange all of these different stamps in a type of pattern that makes sense because the stamp has a variety of different names of places as well as the little icons. It has the ship and the bridge and the circle that says Vancouver, and I'm just kind of trying to make it work in a way that will look aesthetically pleasing but also will go well together. I do have to mention that I think the stamp was definitely designed by people who don't live here, so I think some things that are on the stamp, in my personal opinion, are not as popular or iconic, and some of the iconic places are not mentioned, but that's just kind of how it is, right? Like when you visit somewhere, you can't really see everything at the same time. And I do have to say that here in Vancouver, we get a fair share of not just tourists, but the cruise ships. I think a lot of them come between like Seattle and Alaska on that route, and they stop in Vancouver as well as in Victoria, which is our capital here in British Columbia. So I think this is mostly kind of targeted at people who do those cruises because the radius of the things mentioned here is very small. There's definitely much more to Vancouver, but that's what my project is going to be about. Something that I haven't shared with you before is the reason behind me doing this project is actually because I'll be moving this year. And I'll be moving quite far away to the other side of the country. This is something that has been in the works for a while, and while I'm not ready to reveal all of the details yet, I will definitely kind of share with you more as I go, as it gets closer to that time. What I also intend to do is not only continue this project, but also do things like show you more of my city where I live, show you my craft room. Part of the reason why I haven't done it yet is because it has a view on my neighborhood that I just, don't really feel comfortable sharing on the internet while I live here. But once I move, I don't mind sharing that. So that's definitely going to be up and available in the coming months. So something to be excited about. I've never really done a craft room video, but I really, really want to do it. And I love watching everybody else's, so that's kind of one of my favorite type of videos to watch. So yeah, that's coming once I, organize everything enough to like actually film it, because my craft room is usually a mess, as you can see by my desk here in the video. Actually, like, I'm not a super organized crafter in the sense that like I pull out all of my supplies. You can see here I have like different stickers, I have different tools like my scissors, my stamping blocks, my inks, and I like to keep some of the craft or like spare paper kind of beside me if I need to test stamp something or if I need to clean my stamp or something like that. So, I'm a messy crafter, which I think is fine. And just speaking about what I'm doing here on the screen is I am just kind of stamping out things and then filling the blanks between them. So my advice is definitely start with the biggest stamps. You saw that the very first one that I stamped was the outline of the province of British Columbia, because first of all, I knew I wanted it to be in the middle. Second, I knew I wanted it to overlap with the title of British Columbia. And third, it just takes up so much space that I think it's easier to start with that and then kind of spread out the smaller stamps around. One of the stamps that I'm using is actually from Heidi Swap, from her Christmas collection this past year. Anything that's still available, I will link down below in the description for you. But this little stamp has tiny trees, and I found that that tree goes really well with the bigger tree that's on my British Columbia stamp set. I think it's because all of them are actually produced by inked brands. So if you don't know, like Heidi Swap, Ali Edwards, Studio Calico, all of those like supplies kind of come from, I think, one warehouse, not necessarily one manufacturer, but it's all under the umbrella of inked brands. So I actually find that they often coordinate really well together because they have repeating designs, or they have just things that are kind of similar. Like in the example of this tree, like I just really like how it looks together. It kind of brings some diversity, and at the same time, it doesn't look out of place. So I usually look for things like that in my stamps, and because when I use similar brands or brands that come from kind of one umbrella, that's just something that's easier to do. So that's just my little tip for you if you want to do something similar. What I did decide to do on this notebook cover is dedicate the front of it to kind of more Vancouver themed stamps. And then on the back, I'll kind of use not necessarily the leftover ones, but there's just the ones that I have to do like with the province and destinations around, and not necessarily the city where I live. In the very beginning, when I kind of set out to do this project, I thought I would do it kind of in a real time, documenting what I'm visiting right now and how I want to remember things before I move and things like that. As I kind of got further into this project, I changed my mind and I decided to expand a little bit and just kind of talk about what I love about the place where I live in general, and my memories here of like other places that I visited, because I'm not going to have time to revisit all of them before I leave, even though I'd love to. But I know that I'm going to be back. I have lots of friends here. I've lived here for a decade and a half, so it's a very long time. So I just think that because I've been to the places mentioned on the stamps, it almost kind of gave me the idea to include those memories in my notebook. And I'm somebody who, like I enjoy the like currently documenting, or like current life, like the project life type of stuff, that like documenting things that are happening right now. But at the same time, I also really like documenting things that happened in the past, because that's actually one of my favorite things about scrapbooking. It allows me to relive those moments. And I'm like a very sentimental, nostalgic person. And I just love looking back. Even, some periods of my life are definitely like harder than the others. And it's definitely harder to look back on them. But I found that for me personally, documenting things that happened in the past sometimes it's easier than if I'm going through something difficult or emotional in the moment. So I don't mind kind of looking back on the past like 15 years and thinking about the places I've been and places I've lived and things I've done, and like kind of adventures I've had around here, things like that. So for that reason, I just decided, let's make this notebook kind of a more loose structured, almost like a walk down the memory lane, if that makes sense. So that's kind of where I go with that. And here on the back, I'm gonna take out a lot of stamps from the second stamp set that's British Columbia themed. and just kind of roll with like, well, I've been to these places, maybe I'll find like some maps or loose ephemera that I maybe haven't used in my scrapbooks. What I also do is I have a few other stamps from this series that are themed by like other provinces in Canada. So you saw Ontario, Nova Scotia, Alberta. So I decide, there's a lot of kind of repeating things that don't exist in just one province. For example, Canadian Rockies are actually both in BC and Alberta. And I've done the road trip through them. Like, it's one of the most memorable things that I've done in the past 15 years, I would say. It was just absolutely gorgeous. And I think it's worth documenting, even though maybe I was there for like a day or a couple of days, right? So for that reason, I decide I'm going to pull out things from other stamps that make sense. Like a moose, like we have like moose all over Canada. So like it doesn't have to be just in Ontario. There's like somewhere there is going to be a picture of a fish. I don't know if it's salmon, because that's like we're known for sockeye salmon here in BC, but like obviously we have other fish and there's other fish all around the country, but I just decided to kind of go with that. There's a stamp that has a kind of like a camping tent, which full disclosure, I've never been camping and I have no desire to do it. It's just like not my thing. But we like have a camping culture where I live. The outdoor culture, it's very popular, and it makes sense that, if I'm talking about the vibe of British Columbia, the vibe of Vancouver, we're surrounded by mountains. Like, you can literally go skiing after work, or like in the same day. Like, we're kind of famous for like in the same day you can go golfing, and then like you can do winter sports. Like, it's a pretty unique place. So I kind of wanted to capture some of that. I also found like a sailboat, I think, on the Nova Scotia stamp. Obviously, we're also on the ocean, have lots of water, so that's also very popular. So I'm just kind of stamping away. And I'm very happy with how this is turning out because it looks very graphic. At first, I hesitated with using the black ink because a lot of the time I actually find it's like very stark. I don't use black ink very often. But because I'm stamping on craft paper, it's working really well. Because at first I thought maybe I should go with like darker gray, but I'm happy that I didn't. Black looks fantastic. Also, this ink from Ali Edwards is like very juicy. It's also pretty new and I don't use it that often, but it's like the perfect amount of like ink to get soaked up and have like a very crisp impression from my stamp. What I do have to say is I resisted for the longest time getting stamping blocks because they can be expensive. And I just thought like, well, I'll just use whatever I have on hand. I use these lids from Ali's inks a lot for stamping. But once I got a stamping block, I just can't go back because it's so much better to stamp with them. Because the thing that I kept running out into with the using just the lids, yes, you can do it. Oftentimes you will get an uneven impression because they actually bend pretty easily. So if you're pressing on one side of it, the other one might not stamp as well. With the stamping block, you definitely get more of an even impression. So I would say if you're starting out stamping, rather than buying like a million inks and stamps, yes, it's exciting, and like spending money on the stamping block might not be, but like you will just have such a better result. And also, I have to say that I have a much better stamping experience. It's much more enjoyable, to be honest. And another thing is, like, you can see me cleaning my stamps with my stamp chamois. It's from Lawn Fawn, and I actually bought it from the Ali Edwards website, but I think Lawn Fawn also sells it. If I find it, I will link it down below for you, because it's basically like a cloth that you just like drip some water on to make sure it soaks up the water, and then you can reuse it multiple times. What I used before is I would just use like a wet paper towel. I know people use the kind of baby wipes, but I didn't like the residue of like the soap from them, you know what I mean? So I always prefer the wet paper towels, but it was just so wasteful. And also, I find that the stamp chamois cleans my stamps so much better. Even though I have to admit, like, sometimes you just have to wash your stamps. You have to take them off the plasticky thing, put them in soap water with some, like, maybe like the dishwashing liquid, rinse them, dry them, like they're gonna get so much more stickier, and like the stamping experience will be so much better. That's usually what happens with the stamps that I use a lot, like the alpha stamps, for example, that I've had like for like several years. But overall, that's just my little plug for like investing in good stamping supplies is worth it. And that's something I resisted for a long time, but now I'm like a complete convert. I advocate for it so much. So yeah, that's my little thing with stamping, which I love doing. Here, actually, what I did is I felt like I needed more stamps. Like I didn't want to repeat things too much on this cover. I wanted a little bit more diverse stuff. So I thought like, what do I have that I can also use? And I remember that I have some travel stamps from Paper Person that have beers, sushi, and I think bottle of wine. And the bottle of wine came from like a fall reading stamp, which I personally like don't drink while I read, but I guess people do. So for that reason, I am, just kind of covering the whatever sentiment is going to be on it. And for the beer, we're known for kind of craft beers, and I stamped, I think, the local brew next to it, which again was from a travel stamp, but for me, it just made sense to put it here because there's a huge craft beer culture in Vancouver. It's kind of like, I guess Portland has that. Well, I would say that like lots of major cities have it now, but like I think the West Coast was kind of known for it. I'm not a fan of craft beers, but again, it's like camping. It's just like big part of our local culture. So that's what I wanted to kind of reflect here. Of course, I have the sushi stamp, and that is from Paper Person as well. Oh yeah, here I'm stamping with the wine bottle because we actually have wine produced here in British Columbia in the Okanagan area. It's basically like a desert. It's very dry. It's super sunny. It gets super hot in summer. And they have some amazing wines. They do like wine tours, so you can basically buy like a full day tour with your friends, and you're in a minivan and they take you to a bunch of wineries to do tastings, and you can buy the bottles there, and it's just a fun experience. And we're kind of like known for that. That's a huge tourist industry here. So I wanted to reflect that. Wanted to reflect the sushi because we have amazing and very cheap sushi. So Vancouver has a very big like Asian influence because we've had over generations many immigrants from Asia, and of course they brought their delicious food with them, and the food is just incredible. So one of the things that I want to do in this documenting project is I want to reflect the amazing cuisine, or rather cuisines, that are available. And I have to say, now that I've decided to move, I like try not to take it for granted that I can get like a $3-4 sushi roll that's delicious and amazing, and that's Canadian dollars, by the way, so it's cheaper than American. And I know in lots of places it's like considered this kind of delicacy, when here we just use it as like a fast food basically, which is very healthy, right? So I love that about where I live. I'm definitely gonna miss that, and I just kind of wanted to reflect that in my notebook. So I think I'm gonna do like maybe even a vlog on places where I like to eat, and like different, especially like the Asian dishes, because I think there's a lot of unique things here that you won't find in the rest of Canada. And I just kind of want to commemorate that in my scrapbook. Here I'm coming back to the front page and just adding like a few little stamps. I decided that the fish is something that can repeat because it's small, and it just adds like a little something. And definitely like eating seafood is just huge in Vancouver. It's a big part of life here. And of course, like if you're a tourist here, you got to try it, unless of course you don't eat it, which is totally understandable. We also have amazing vegan food, which again I want to reflect in my scrapbook. So here's a kind of quick view of how it turned out. I think it turned out pretty well, and I'm very happy with how this looks, and it's a very easy way to decorate. So one of the other thing that I want to do before I start documenting is to decorate this front page. So the Traveler's Notebook from Traveler's Company come with these pages. They're a little bit thinner in the front, and they all have this kind of frame and their logo. And I don't want to cover up the logo. I like it. So what I decided to do is use some of my washi to add a little something in terms of like background and pattern, but not using pattern paper because I'm very conscious about like not adding too much bulk to my notebook right off the bat, because these things start overflowing and get super bulky really fast. I have these fun washi tapes from Studio Calico. It's a bunch of houses and kind of a coordinating like orange dotted type of washi tape. And then I'm using some of the stickers that I recently got. So I have a sticker haul from Etsy that you can take a look at. I'll link it up above at the eye. But it had this, like, we call it Vancouver special house. It's just the type of house we have here that's kind of very recognizable. And I decided to put it up front because I also have a matching washi tape. So I thought like this one could be like kind of like, this is my home, you know, and there's this girl journaling, so I kind of thought like it's like me journaling about my home basically. It's a little bit symbolic for me. And then I'm just using different washi tapes. I think this one is from Paige Evans from her Bungalow Lane collection. I like the green and like it's a very colorful one. And the one with the dates and days of the week was from Paper Person from their January subscription. So there's just like a little bit of everything here. And one of the things I realized is that my girl sticker is actually see-through. So what I'm gonna have to do in a second is pull up some of my washi, because if I just put the girl sticker on, it's actually not gonna look good. So when you have like a bunch of different stickers, be mindful of the quality essentially, because once I peel off the back, I start seeing like, oh, this doesn't look good. So I need to go back. And the good thing about washi tape, as opposed to like me gluing a bunch of pattern paper on, is the fact that I'm able to just pull it up and it comes off really easily. You just have to be careful. Some washi tape is more sticky than the other, but here I was able to just pull it up and trim it, and there was like no glue, there was no torn paper or anything, so I was actually pretty lucky. But you know, sometimes you just have to make it work. Another thing that you can do in the situation, and what I've done with these stickers, sometimes I just keep the backing on and I just add some adhesive to the back and I glue it with the backer, because then it's not transparent, then it's just like a regular sticker on white paper. So I guess that's what I could have done here, but I just thought like I don't want to make it too bulky so close to the spine at the very beginning of my notebook. So that's what I did. And here I'm just adding some more washi tape and then trimming it, and I think it looks kind of like eclectic but also funky. I have this sticker sheet that's all about Vancouver, and it has a bunch of like super tiny stickers that I decided to use in this frame because I didn't know what else to do with it. So I tried different combos and I tried to figure out how I want to do it, and at the end I decided that I almost kind of want to use it as a window, as like you're looking out of your window at different views, and you see there like a view of Stanley Park, a view of downtown Vancouver, a person walking under umbrella. So it's definitely like a bit of a collage of typical scenes in the city, but it's also a kind of like a window out, as opposed to like you sitting at home and journaling, if that makes sense. That's the vibe I went for. The thing that I love about traveler's notebooks is like there's not that much blank paper to work on, but you know, it's like it's just enough to get creative, but it's not enough to be intimidated. So I think it looks pretty good. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please let me know. And if you had fun watching it, please give me a like and consider subscribing to my channel. I would really love to see you again. I will be back with more videos like this one very, very soon. Thank you so much for watching.